Certainly, and I can certainly, with what you just mentioned now, I guess, just as you mentioned, half glass full, half glass empty. With that in mind, certainly I'm sure that there are also some positive stories, perhaps, that we can address. What are some of the investment opportunities that currently exist in Guatemala that would perhaps be of added value or would help Guatemala as it's beginning to work towards achieving the MDGs?
Yeah, certainly. I think Guatemala's proximity to the U.S. Is a major asset, because we still are highly competitive in some activities that are very intense in the use of labor. We still can compete with Southeast Asia, especially because of our proximity to the market. So in the last 20 years, we've greatly diversified our economy. On the one hand, we're an important producer of clothes. On the other, we're an important producer of food. We produce vegetables, fruits, which are sold in U.S. supermarkets, because we can get them from the farmer to the market in the United States in a matter of 10 days, or less if we use air. So if you look at the structure of Guatemalan exports, it's changed dramatically over the years. We used to export 2 or 3 products, and that was the bulk of exports. Today, we have a range of 30 or 40 important export commodities. Some are still in the traditional field. Sugar and coffee still are very important, so are bananas. But now you can add to the list all these new products. And then there is another area of growth, which is the Central American Common Market. About 1/3 of our exports go to our neighbors in Central America. It's become a big, big business. When I used to work on Central American integration, interregional trade was about $500 million. Today it's in the area of $6 billion. So it's really grown, and Guatemala probably is the single country that's benefited the most because of the economies of scale. It's a country that has about 14 million inhabitants. So even the domestic market is enough to support some light industries. So the country was greatly benefited when the regional market expanded that potential. We have around 40 million consumers in Central America, and it's not, one country benefiting vis-a-vis the others. It's a win-win situation for everybody. But Guatemala has been particularly successful in competing in that market.
And with that said, how important is the private sector, and how much of that is the private sector getting involved with deals to help Guatemala and its economy?
Well, Guatemala's basically a market economy. If I had to single out one of the biggest problems of Guatemala is its very low tax base, which is another way of saying that the public sector is quite small. Public expenditures in the area of consumption and investment are under 15%, meaning that 85% of the Guatemalan economy is in private hands. Private sector is very diversified. We have extremely modern multinational Guatemalan firms that operate worldwide. Pollos Campero is one of them. They have outlets in the United States, in Europe, in Asia, even in China. So these are very modern companies that function as any transnational firm would. And on the other end of the scale, we have subsistence farmers, which is an important segment in the Guatemalan economy. We're trying to bring the subsistence farmers into the market economy. The production of vegetables has been a very important arena for that to happen. People who used to produce corn on a very small plot of land have now dedicated themselves to the production of some export crops, and the yield, of course, of a small plot of land increases tenfold. So we're organizing cooperatives but that's private sector also. And you have a large area in between. I would say it's a pretty vibrant, modern private sector where there's still room for expansion. And one final point is that we do have important international firms in Guatemala, although the participation of international investment in total investment in Guatemala is somewhat lower than the average for Central America.
Okay. And with that said, if you will, Ambassador, as a last objective within our conversation of learning more about Guatemala and its the importance of information communication and technology, where Guatemala is as far as that's concerned.
Well, there's been a quantum leap in the last 20 years. I still remember when I was a child, to get a telephone in Guatemala was absolutely a luxury. And you had to pay a considerable amount to be able to get a telephone installed in your house. So telephones were something that only the elite could have, or maybe the business sector. It was nobody could dream of having a telephone. I don't remember the data, but there must have been one telephone for every 30,000 inhabitants, something like that. Today, Guatemala has more telephones than population, meaning that each family has, on average, more access than one telephone. And we're also highly digitalized. The internet has become ubiquitous, not only in the urban centers. You find it everywhere. Children are becoming technology savvy, maybe not in grade school, but in middle school and certainly in high school. It's a real revolution, which it's very impressive. When you go to wherever you go in Guatemala, you see people talking on cell phones. It's become a very competitive business. Talking of private business, these are all private companies. There are 3 or 4 important servers that compete with each other. And I'm happy to say that Guatemala is one of the lowest tariffs for telephone use anywhere in Latin America. It's really been one of the very successful experiments in privatization of what used to be a public monopoly.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us today at South News. We hope to see you here again to talk a little bit more about the progress in Guatemala. Once again, thank you very much to everyone for joining us today at South News.